Peace and blessings, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Auteurs for Hire podcast. In this episode, we will be doing a top 5 ranking list of the so-called black movies of the 1920s. Many people believe that art is subjective, and that is true to a small extent. When it comes to what is good art, or in this video, what is good filmmaking, there is a lot of objectivity that we all need to put into consideration. So the way I will be ranking these videos will be in primarily 2 categories. The first categories will be the narrative, which includes the originality of the story, the development of the characters, the strength of the plot, the depths of the theme, and emotional impact. The second category will be the technicalities of the film, which include cinematography, editing, sound design or score, acting, performances, and directing. And just because a film has a historical significance does not mean it is automatically the best film, though I have no problem using historical significance as sprinkles on tops. However, when it comes to the so-called black films of the 1920s, most of these films have a lot of historical significance. So without further ado, let us begin. I will start off with the honorable mentions. The first honorable mention is 11 p.m. by Richard Maurice. If y'all haven't watched my review for 11 p.m., you would already know my conflicted feelings of this film. The plot is as original as any original film, and the film is, in my opinion, very well directed. But its Achilles heel is the acting and the plot. Now, as much as that it is very obvious that the budget was the main hindrance for this film, as many of the actors played 2 or 3 different roles, the story became very rushed and inconsistent, especially towards the end of the movie. The characters, though very unique, had little development. For example, as weird as the movie was and as weird as the plot was, the weird part was that none of the characters seemed to recognize each other despite playing major roles in each character's lives. Due to that inconsistency with the character development, it does take the film back. But it is a creative and interesting film that will keep you entertained. The second honorable mention will be 10 Nights in the Ballroom. This silent film is an adaptation of Timothy Shea Authors' novel of the same name. The theme of this film is a clear product of the temperance movement and a cautionary tale of the destructions of alcohol. The other significant thing is that this adaptation was featuring an all-black all-star cast of many players such as Harry Henderson and Lawrence Chenault, who will be in many films on this list. The strength of this film is the lead actor. Charles Gilpin gives an expression and conveys the emotional toll of addiction. However, the plot is very straightforward, nothing too complex, nothing too exciting. However, in my opinion, it is not top 5 worthy, but is worthy of mention nonetheless. Now, let us get into our actual top 5 list. Number 5, The Symbol of the Unconquered, directed by Oscar Micheaux. When it comes to Oscar Micheaux's films, it is not a matter of will his work be on this list, it's a matter of where it will be ranked. The Symbol of the Unconquered could be ranked higher, however portions of the film is lost through time, and it would be very hard in putting a film that is missing pieces higher than many films that we have full of on this list. Nonetheless, the portions that we do have is very powerful. When it comes to the narrative angles of the film, this film is very original. Oscar Micheaux wrote this film, which is about a young mulatto black woman, Eve Mason, and her neighbor Hugh, who owns property and faces resistance from white characters and a passing so-called black man named Jefferson Driscoll, played by Lawrence Chenault. And this man covets their land. This simple plot helps us watch the protagonists of the film grow as they had the fear, and Eve, who never homesteaded before, displays self-determination in the face of not only racial prejudice by their own. The themes of this film has much depth as they tackle issues of not only racial prejudice, but the issue of racial passing of those so-called mixed race black folks who could pass as white, and the reasons why some did and some didn't. Another thing that was there was the value of owning land and keeping that land no matter what. And if you think this film has emotional depth, you're right on the money, because this film makes you feel sorrow, anger, and may cause you to have some sort of conflict within, because the issue of racial passing is right in your face, and we see two characters that deal with the issues differently, and watching it is honestly causes one to almost have pity on those who had to deal with that issue. The technicalities of the film is clearly a product of its time, and to put things in this proper context, just like the majority of the race films and films in general at this time, the equipment was relatively new and expensive. Considering the black filmmakers like Mashal also did not have the same budget as Hollywood films and their counterparts at that time. Nonetheless, the cinematography of the film was good. It was not great, especially the KKK scene, but besides that, the cinematography was good. Oscar Mashal's direction is top tier, and for this being one of his first films, he showed that he can direct his actors to give great performances, in which the actors were good, especially acting in a film that tackles a serious issue and that requires serious performances, in which all the actors gave. The only flaw I will give this film was the character Old Abraham. At the beginning of the film, he was very important, but he became very useless and odd whenever he was in the film. Not that his acting was bad, it was just his character didn't really fit. All in all, the number 5 slot goes to Mashal's The Symbol of the Unconquered. Number 4, Body and Soul by Oscar Mashal. This is the second Mashal film on this list. The film was also lost, and we do not have the full film on hand. This film was actually Paul Robeson's first film he acted in, and he gave a great performance. The originality of the film is typical from a Mashal flick, which is that he knows how to create a story from scratch and make it interesting. The plot of the story follows the journey of a former convict who infiltrates a community by posing as a preacher. The ending of the movie has a very nice plot twist, though I will understand why some people may be a little pissed off at the ending. But the themes of this film focuses on bewaring of the false prophets around you. Not as in-depth than the other entries, but a good cautionary theme that I personally enjoyed. It being a silent film, the intertitles was nothing unique, but the strongest part of this film was the acting. Paul Robeson took up much of the screen time, and watching his debut acting on the big screen will show you why he is a legend, and at this time, a legend in the making. His role as an intimidating presence and a great deceiver was played straight to the T. Julia Theresa Russell, who played his counterpart, played a very well modest and feeble woman. But I believe who gave the best performance next to Robeson was Mercedes Gilbert, who played the mother in the film. Another underrated point of the film was the editing. Some of the editing techniques that were used helped the film flow smoothly while watching it. Overall, the story, the acting, the plot helped this film to flow, and nothing really felt out of place, even the characters. Number 3, The Flying Ace by Richard Norman. The third film on this list was a fun watch. It is about a World War I fighter pilot who returns to his former job as a railroad detective, and he must recover a satchel filled with $25,000 of stolen payroll, locate a missing employee, and capture the gang of thieves responsible. Richard E. Norman directed the heck out of this film, and honestly, this film would take you by surprise by how good it was. The acting in this film was top tier. Catherine Boyd, who played the female lead, was bewitching and enjoyable in every scene that she was in. It's understandable why the protagonist and the antagonist both pined after her. The lead, Lawrence Cranner, did a lot of acting with his arms and hands, but still came off as a powerful and compelling leader. What makes this film number 3 was the originality of the film, the acting and the directing, but the effects within the film made this movie much more engaging to watch, especially the airplane scene at the end of the movie. The flaw of the film was the cinematography, which wasn't the best. The camera was still, and that was all. There was not really that much camera movement. The film also has a summer creaky, campy type of feel when watching it. Though it is better than some of Mashal's films, I still would think that Richard E. Norman could have learned a lot from Mashal, because Norman showed that he was in fact a little bit more creative on the production sense. Anyways, let's move on. Number 2, Within Our Gates, Oscar Micheaux. The second rated film on this list will have to go to Oscar Micheaux's Within Our Gates. I can't keep raving about the originality of Oscar Micheaux. The plots of his stories are always unique, and it's no difference with this film. In my opinion, this is his best film from the 1920s because Micheaux really displayed his skills in directing and just creating a story in general. The actors in this film, led by Evelyn Prier, was A1. Though this was a silent film, Prier's acting was convincing as a resilient woman who had a traumatic past. This is surprising because if you watch Prier's other works, she is usually in a more comedic role. Here she has to play a more melodramatic role, and she was not overly exaggerated in her acting. She was realistic and had a very modest feel while watching her, and that is the strength of this film, her acting alone. The actors played their roles well too. The story, on the other hand, was the other strength of the film. One thing that I noticed about Micheaux is that many of his films that are in the 1920s do touch upon race issues. Howbeit, all of his stories are unique and you don't feel like he's just rehashing the same story over and over again or trying to put all the issues of racial issues into one story. In this story, we learn about the wicked landowners, the quote-unquote coons who sell out their own communities, and what makes this film historically powerful was the lynching scene. The way that scene was edited had you at the edge of your seats, as we don't just watch a static camera lynching someone, but in a creative way, we know what's happening. All in all, this film is a must-watch from Oscar Micheaux and any enthusiast of so-called black movies. This is an important watch. And number 1, The Scar of Shame by Frank Perugini. The number 1 film on this list is The Scar of Shame. This film is a film that I keep recommending to everyone. I'm not saying that this is a perfect, but man, the story told on this one is beautiful. The themes that this film touches upon are social hierarchy within the so-called black community. And another theme is, do you love someone out of pity or love out of the realness of your heart? It also grabs the issues of mental traumas and how one lives with it. The acting in this film was top tier and had great performances by every actor. One thing I consider when watching actors on film is how aware am I that this is actors acting. The whole time it felt that the actors were real people on the screen. When it comes to the editing, none of the edits were unnecessary. All of the shots and edits were meaningful to the story, from the close-up shots from the leads embracing the co-lead right before they got married, and even the symbolism of the doll representing Miss Lynn Moses' fragile state. I not only believe that Scar of Shame is one of the best so-called black films of the 1920s, but it is also one of the best black films of all time, and at least top 50 best films of all time on my personal list. But hey, that's just my opinion. What do you think? Leave your opinions in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and share the knowledge with your folks and kinfolks. And remember, the truth shall make you free. Peace.